Welcome. I'm Judy with Hope Dementia Ministry, and this is Understanding Dementia-Related Behaviors. People living with dementia have a degenerative brain disorder that interferes with their thinking and communicating and remembering and being able to take care of themselves. So being a dementia caregiver can be a challenging job. There's a lot of things that we try to understand about what people are doing, meaning the behaviors that they're exhibiting. Because as people progress in their dementia, they're often unable to express themselves as well as they used to verbally. They can still talk, but they can't quite get across to you what's going on, what their needs might be, what they want, what they desire. And so they exhibit certain types of behavior that sometimes we don't understand. Behaviors often have triggers. That means something happens that makes them do something else. For example, something as simple as walking in front of a door might make someone open the door and go outside. So might actually bring on wandering just because of that trigger. Also, a person can be triggered by someone walking into the room that they don't have a good relationship with. They might not be able to articulate to you what it is. Maybe they're afraid of that person. Maybe they've had an argument with that person, but they can't tell you, but you might they might exhibit other kinds of behaviors that you realize something's going on. So we're going to talk about some behaviors that are not all the behaviors that people living with dementia have, but the most common ones, the ones that most people go through and experience as they go on this dementia journey. And the first one is repetitive speech. That is an early symptom, and it's a telltale sign that is the first thing that family members start to notice, where the person might ask the same question over and over. They might ask you a question, you give them an answer. A few minutes later, they're asking you that same question again, because either they can't remember what the answer was or they don't remember asking at all. And there might be other things that they repeat. Sometimes a family talked about their mother as they would drive in the car. She would read road signs or the names of stores, and she would like Lowe's, and she would say Lowe's, Lowe's, Lowe's. She would get stuck on a word where she would just keep saying it over and over. So those are very common behaviors. But repetitive stories are another type of thing that has to go with this short-term memory loss. When people are experiencing short-term memory loss, that means they can't put anything into long-term memory anymore. If you tell them, okay, we have this to do today and this to do today and this to do, they can't remember those things that they're going to be doing. And so they may ask you over and over, when are we going to the doctor? When are we going to the doctor? Because they can't remember what the answer was. They can't put anything into long-term memory. So once they've heard it, they hear it, but a short time later, they can't remember that anymore. So one of the ways to get beyond this strict repetitiveness is to maybe distract them with another activity. Being engaged in something can get people away from the obsession of asking that same question over and over. Because a lot of times what people will say is, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. What should I do? What should I do? And they just do it over and over. So having something that will engage them, whether it's building a puzzle, helping to cook a meal, unloading the dishwasher, something that they can focus on and do, and it kind of gets their mind off this other thing that they're obsessed about, and they keep asking the question. If someone is telling a story from their past, um, you know, they, everyone jokes about, well, they can't remember that they just had breakfast, but they talk about stuff that happened 40 years ago. Because in this file cabinet of memory that people have, sometimes they move back through that file cabinet. And the more recent memories are gone, and they can't reminisce about those kinds of things that are more current. They go back and they live further back in their memories, and they talk about things that happened then. So you might be hearing about something that you've heard the story many, many, many times, but instead of halting the conversation saying, yes, yep, you already told me that. Yep, I know. And so was there and this and that. It's better to engage them, because it's good for them to reach back into their memories and to talk about that. It's social connection for them. They are interacting with another human being, and that's a really important thing for people living with dementia. But also, if you engage in the story, you might get more on the topic. You might be able to explore more of what was happening back then. Um, One woman talked about her mother not recognizing her as her daughter, but she thought she was her friend from high school. And so she would always kind of cut the conversation off, like, Mom, you don't remember me? And so then after we talked one time, she went the next time she saw her mom, and again, she thought she was her friend from high school. Instead of cutting off that conversation, she engaged that conversation. And her mom told her a lot of things about what she did in high school. And she realized that, her mom was kind of a wild girl and got into some trouble and things that she never had heard about before. So engaging in those stories might bring out more detail. If that doesn't work, if they stay stuck on the same thing over and over, again, trying to engage them in something that would be more stimulating, that would be off that topic, is the way to try to redirect that. Paranoia is another issue that can be really difficult for people to deal with. It tends to start out as an early symptom. So before we even realize the person is living with dementia, they might be really paranoid about things. They might think someone is stealing from them. They might think that someone is dishonest, someone in the family, and they might be very upset by that. And what we tend to do when someone is being paranoid about something, we tend to try to set them straight. Oh, no, no, that's not what's happening. Oh, no, no, but what that is going to do is make them even more upset and even more staunchly into this delusion that they might be having. So if someone says to you, and again, it could be a trigger. Maybe the checkbook is laying on the counter and your mother sees the checkbook, and that triggers in her something about her money. And she might say to you, I think your brother is stealing from me. And, our first reaction would be, oh, no, no, Mom, he's paying your bills. So, yeah, he's using your checkbook and there might be money gone, but that's because he's paying your bills. But to her, that doesn't make sense. That's not part of her reality that she can understand. And so she might think now you're in on it too because you're defending your brother. So it's far better to validate their feeling. If they say, I think your brother is stealing from me, your response should be more in the vein of, oh no, that must feel really terrible. And then the other thing to do is to ask their opinion about what you should do. Because a lot of times the things that make sense to us, trying to prove to them that something's not happening, doesn't logically make sense to them. So if you can say to them, what do you think we should do about that? Then they might come up with an answer that maybe doesn't make sense. Maybe if she says, hide the checkbook, okay, we'll hide the checkbook. And that doesn't necessarily make sense because, someone has to pay the bills, someone has to deal with the checkbook. But if it makes her feel better to hide the checkbook so that no one can steal her money, then that you can be removing that trigger that would send her into thinking someone's stealing. One family told me about their dad who liked to watch police dramas. And so there was a lot of car chases and shooting and bullets. And he was very worried that those bullets were going to come through the TV screen and hit him. And so instead of saying to him, Dad, no, this is not real. This is fake. This is TV, because it doesn't seem fake. It seems very real. And especially if you've got a really big TV, it's like life size. And so instead, what she said to him was, oh no, I had bulletproof glass installed on your TV, so those bullets can't get to you. Oh, well, that made sense to him. And then he was more comfortable watching his police dramas. So we never know what is going to make sense. That she might have tried that, that might not have worked. And so you try something else. It is a lot of trial and error, but thinking the answer doesn't have to really make sense. It has to make sense to them. Another family talked about their mother who was always complaining about the people who lived in the attic. Now, nobody lived in the attic, but this was something she was imagining. She maybe heard some sounds or noises or something in her house, and she thought someone was up there. So they went to great lengths to prove to her that there was no one in the attic. They took the ladder, they went through the crawl space, they made her go up there, look around. Nobody could possibly live up here. But all that did was make her more angry and more afraid. And it really caused a big, big, big issue. So finally, when we started talking it out, and I suggested, why don't you find out what she wants you to do. Ask how you can help. Say, that must be terrible having noisy neighbors. Is there anything I can do to help? Do you want? And so what they said to her was, do you want us to make them leave? And she said to them, no, they're okay. It's just that they're noisy sometimes. So all she was doing was kind of expressing something that was in her life. And they wanting to set her straight and help her understand that there is no one in the attic, they kind of started the snowball of it becoming a more paranoid issue. So it's best not to argue with people, but it's also important that you see things from their perspective. If someone is paranoid about there's a monster in the window, there's someone looking in my window, something is looking in my window, and maybe they're closing the drapes and the house is dark all the time because they're afraid. They're afraid that something is out there to get them. It's good to see things from their perspective, first of all. So if you sit in the chair where your dad watches TV from and look over at the window, what do you see? Do you see something across the street that might look strange? Is there something on the porch, a wind chime or something that moves with the breeze? Is there something in the house that might be reflecting off that window that could be scary, that looks like a monster? Human beings have this ability to see faces in places that there isn't a face. For example, if you think about a house where there's windows on the upper floor and then there's a door down on the bottom, that could look like eyes and a mouth. We can see faces and things. And so people very easily adapt something that they see to being the face. Maybe not the face of a person, but the face of a monster. And so if we look at things from their perspective, maybe there is something that's reflecting in that window, and all we have to do is change the position of that lamp or that light source that doesn't, or turn the direction of his chair. Something, there could be some simple answers to it. But if we are, first of all, validating their fear, being on their side, offering to help them, and finding out what they think needs to be done, that's the best way to approach these when we have someone that's dealing with paranoia. It can be really tricky sometimes. It can be very hurtful. It's one thing if they're accusing a caregiver of stealing from them. Um, but it's another thing if they're accusing you of stealing something, or you asked if you could borrow something and they said sure, and you borrowed it, but then they forgot that they gave you permission, and you're like, you took my thing, you took it home. Why did you take it? And so we have to remember that this is the dementia. This is not the person. This is not what they really think of you, but this is the dementia speaking. So if we can put that aside and relax and let go of those kinds of things, it's going to make the whole journey a lot better. If we aren't able to deal with things in a way that makes sense to the person with dementia, If we cut them off when they ask the same question over and over, if we get very frustrated and we yell at them for saying the same thing so many times, what's going to happen is they're going to become more and more agitated. As the caregiver becomes more and more agitated, that vibe is often felt by the person living with dementia. They don't understand why you're so angry. All you did was ask what time lunch was going to be. And the person with dementia doesn't understand that they've asked 100 times. Um, and so they don't understand why someone's getting upset with them. And so if we can learn to deal with those kinds of things, we're going to be able to avoid a lot of this agitation that might unnecessarily be brought about. And I talk a lot about being in their reality. So if someone is having a paranoid delusion and you try to reorient them to your reality, it's not going to work because whatever they're experiencing is completely real to them. If you try to explain to someone they think they have to go to work and you say you're retired, you're not going to work anymore. In their reality, they're going to work. They need to go to work. And so we need to learn to be in their reality. If they feel they have to go to work, what can we do to help them feel productive? What can we do to help them feel like they are going to work? Um, what can we do to help them solve a problem? Being in their reality is where they're going to feel more heard, more comfortable, more validated. We can make the change, they cannot. And so that being in someone's reality is the biggest key to keeping people calm. If you are thinking something is real and the people all around you are constantly telling you it's not or correcting you, no, mom, it's this. No, mom, it's that. Mom, why can't you remember this? That makes you feel very uncomfortable and makes you not want to be with them. And, you maybe don't even understand what's happening to you. They don't understand what's happening to you. And so there's a lot of fighting that goes on. If we can calm down, don't argue. And one woman said, "Oh, so I just have to always tell him he's right?" Maybe. And if that can make everybody's life a little more smooth, then why not? It would be worth it. Another thing that can cause agitation in someone is unmet pain needs. So if someone has arthritis or a bad back or some other kind of illness that's causing pain, and that pain is not being addressed, it can blow up as in some form of anger. For example, if someone got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, perhaps they fell in the bathroom. They got themselves back to bed. You arrive in the morning and you're going to help them get dressed. And you go to move their arm and they just lash out at you. They're so upset. Oh, and they scream and they lash out at you. And you can't figure out what's going on. Well, my mother was always been just, so calm and gentle. And what is this? Why is she so angry with me? Maybe there was an injury that happened during that fall. She doesn't remember it. She can't explain to you, I got up and I went to the bathroom and I fell and now my arm really hurts. She doesn't know why her arm hurts. She just knows that you trying to move it is not comfortable and she's very upset and she wants you to stop. She can't explain all these things to you. And so we have to be very careful about trying to figure out what's going on. If someone is cradling their arm, if their face is wincing, or some kind of movement makes them yell or shudder, then we have to be in tune to there is a pain issue here. If someone is sitting in their chair and they've been there too long and their back hurts, or they're maybe developing pressure sores or something, and they're just being left in the same position all day long, that can develop into agitation and even anger. And the whole personality of the person can change because there's this unmet pain issue. If your loved one is someone who has arthritis, has been taking maintenance drugs for pain all along, just because they can't express to you that they're feeling pain, they can't express it in words, doesn't mean that they're not. And so we have to be sure to be on a regular basis addressing this whole pain issue. Another really common and potentially dangerous behavior is wandering. Again, we talked about triggers. If someone walks by the front door is made to open. An open door is made to go out. It doesn't have to be something that simple, but if your loved one is looking out the window sitting in their chair, looking out the window, and they see a little dog walking down the sidewalk. Oh no, there's just a little dog walking out there and there's no person out there. I better go out and check out what's happening with that little dog. So they go out of the house. They realize, okay, there is a person out walking this dog, but now they've wandered away from the house. And when memory issues become a big part of the journey, it's not just people and situations, but it's also spatial memory. In our short-term memory is the same place where our spatial memory is stored. So when someone loses their short-term memory, most likely their spatial memory is going to be gone as well. The spatial memory is what tells you where your bathroom is in your house, where the bedroom is in your house, where your house is in your neighborhood, where your neighborhood is in your town. That's your spatial memory. And that's why people can get outside of their homes and suddenly not recognize anything. They've lived there, could be for 50 or 60 years, but suddenly they don't know where they are. And so that's a very strange feeling. So they keep walking because surely if they keep walking, they're going to come to where they recognize their own house. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. And so people can just keep going and going and going and going. Um, so when we think about safeguards against wandering, um, being able to keep people from going out a door, there's a few ways that you can do that. You can often they can manage the lock, the deadbolt, the things that are right in front of them. But if you put a lock at the top of the door or at the bottom of the door, often they won't look that way. People with advanced dementia develop tunnel vision, so they're going to look at just what's right ahead of them. They can see the doorknob and the deadbolt, but something way up at the top or down at the bottom is not something that they readily will see, and they won't be able to open the door, and so they may give up. It's stuck, it's broken, and so they may walk away. Another idea also is to put a black rug in front of the door. For many, many people with dementia, a dark rug on the floor often looks like a hole, especially if there's a lot of contrast between a light colored floor and the dark rug. It's like a hole. They'll just fall right into it. They won't cross it. Um, and that might also explain why you have such a hard time getting your loved one to go out the door because they're afraid to cross that black rug. Putting triggers away, like if you have a coat rack that's by your front door, putting on a coat might be a trigger to go out the door. So put those things away. Some people have even gone to the extremes of putting a curtain rod across the door opening and putting on a curtain that's the same color as the wall. People develop dimmer vision as dementia progresses, and so if there's no contrast there, they don't even see that there's anything there. It just looks like the same color as the wall. It looks like a blank wall. So that's another idea. Identification jewelry is important. A GPS watch. There's a lot of ways to track people, but if they don't take their phone with them or they don't put their code on that's got their name and address in it, then you don't have the resources of getting them back. If someone will wear a piece of jewelry, that's a good way to identify who they are, who should be called in an emergency. A GPS tracking watch is better than a phone, because if they don't carry their phone with them, they set it down somewhere. But if they're used to wearing a watch and they will wear that all the time, then you can track them on their phone to find out quicker where they are. Making sure that the neighbors know the circumstances. That if your loved one is out wandering around in the neighborhood and someone sees them and they're alone, they can call you and say, "Hey, I see your mom's out for a walk. Are you aware of that?" Um, our neighborhoods are not quite like they were generations ago, where people knew each other and looked out for each other. A lot of people are working all the time, and they're just not around, or we don't know our neighbors that well, and so they're not going to come out there and stick their nose in where they don't belong. So it's important to let your neighbors know what's happening and what to look out for. And if it happens a lot, then it's important to consider a change of living situation. If your loved one lives alone and they are wandering, then you need to do something about that, because it's not safe for them, and you become the responsible party because they are compromised. There's other types of solutions you can make for it. One family, they didn't want to restrict their mother from going outside, so they locked the front door. The backyard was fenced, the gate was locked, but she could come and go freely through her back door and her back porch. She could sit in the yard, she could work in her garden. So she had that freedom to go in and out, but she couldn't get out in the front, or she could get lost. Um, but those are things to keep in mind with the wandering. Disruption of sleep patterns. As people progress in dementia, often their sleep patterns become way off. They might sleep too much during the day and then they're up all night. They might wake up in the middle of the night and think it's daytime and get dressed and they're ready to go somewhere. And if you are the person who is responsible for overnight, you're the all-time caregiver, then that means you're not getting sleep, they're not getting sleep, but they might sleep during the day, but then you're up during the day. So it can be a really difficult situation for a caregiver. When people get agitated more in the evenings, it's often called sundowners, and people with dementia often experience this. When the environment outside naturally gets dark, we as human beings get this uptick of melatonin. That is our sleep hormone. When it happens with someone who's living with dementia, it can cause agitation and discomfort. And really, what it is they are getting tired. And especially now in the winter when it gets dark so early. I mean, it's dark by 5 o'clock, but bedtime might not be until 8 or 9. What are you going to do with all those hours in there? Well, blue light therapy can be a good solution for this. They sell lots of units that you can mount it on the wall, you can set it on the desk next to you, you can set it on the end table next to your chair, and it just bathes the person with a brighter light. Often, senior citizens live in very dark environments, and this means they tend to nod off more during the day. They don't get enough sunlight that tells their brain that it's daytime and regulates their circadian rhythm. And there was a big study done that talked about the light levels in the homes of senior citizens, and that they live in extremely dark environments. A lot of people have issues with glare, and if the light is too bright, they want the curtains closed, they want the area dimmed, but the brain's not receiving enough light to know that it's daytime. And so that can really, if they sleep too much through the day, then they're just not going to sleep at night. And also getting a little bit more physical activity. If people are sitting around all day or snoozing during the day, then they're not going to sleep well at night. But if they are getting activity on a regular basis, moving around, these things are really important for circulation, for repositioning the body, to avoid pressure sores and pain and things like that, moving from one chair to another, walking around the house. Those are all important things to build into the day. And that can also help to alleviate wandering sometimes too. Get the person outside, get them walking in the sunshine for a little bit, let them wander around the neighborhood, get some fresh air. That may be another way to keep them closer to home. But also establishing a sleep routine. That means that you turn the TV off at the same time every night. You go through the same routine of getting ready for bed. If you've raised children, you think about how kids really respond to a bedtime routine. We go to bed at the same time every day. That gets them up at the same time every day. You go through the same things, whether it's have a snack, take a bath, read some books. You can do those same kinds of things with people living with dementia. They enjoy the reading a story, the winding down, especially if that is reminiscent of a pattern that they did with their own children. That might be something that's comforting, something that helps them reconnect with themselves. Um, Making sure that their room is dark, is quiet, and is cool helps people sleep better and longer. So you think, okay, the room is dark. What if they have to get up in the middle of the night? You don't want to have a lot of night lights around that make the room bright because then when they wake up, they might be confused that it's bright in here. It must be time to get up. So the motion sensor night lights are a good thing to have. If they put their feet down, the motion sensor will turn a light on so they can see the floor, not bright because you don't want it to be overly bright. Um, but that's a better thing than to have a safety night light that's on all the time and may make the room seem bright when they wake up in the middle of the night. Um, it's important for the caregivers to get quality sleep. So if disruptive sleep patterns is causing you to not sleep at all, then sleep deprivation is a super bad thing. It can actually bring on dementia. It's one of the big contributors to developing dementia. So if that's what's happening, then maybe you need to hire an overnight watcher, someone who is there to deal with your loved one in the middle of the night if they're hungry, if they have to go to the bathroom, if they can't find their way back to their room, so that you can sleep through the night, so you can be on during the day. Okay, let's talk about meal times. There's a lot of things that we have to think differently about when we're dealing with someone with dementia. It might be visual things, it might be swallowing issues, it might be social engagement. Sometimes people simply forget to eat or drink, so they might need to be prompted, they might need to be given that reminder. Um, when you're thinking about meals for your loved one, a lot of times caregivers are very busy. And so we stop by our mom or dad's house, we fix them lunch, we set it in front of them, and then we run around the house and we take care of lots of things that need to be done while we're there. And you come back and you see that they're not eating. What's wrong? Don't you like what I made? Why aren't you eating? What's happening? And when we stop and think about it, for most people, eating is a social behavior. And so sometimes it's best to sit and eat with your loved one. They may also need some cueing. They may forget what the next step is in the process of eating. If you're sitting across from them and you're eating, they're picking up on your cues. One woman told about going out with her friend. Her friend had early onset Alzheimer's, so she was just in her 50s. And so the two couples would go out to lunch. And they went to a sandwich shop, and the ladies sat across from each other, and the men sat across from each other. And while the lady was eating her sandwich, her friend was also eating. And at one point, she passed her sandwich over to her husband to see if he would like some of it because it was just too much for her. When she did that, her friend stopped eating and wrapped up her sandwich. And she thought, okay, she's full too. Then her husband passed it back and she continued eating her sandwich. Then her friend across from her opened up her sandwich and started eating again. And that's an example of mirroring. So if the person across from you is eating, then you will eat. If the person across from you is not eating, then you don't eat. You might need those extra cues. Um, I saw a video one time where a caregiver had to sit next to a woman. The woman could do it herself, but she needed to be reminded every step. Take take a bite, chew, 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 swallow, swallow, swallow. And the caregiver sat there and went through every cue for the woman. She could still do it, but she needed the cues. So if your loved one is not eating, they might be needing some cues. Utensils can become difficult to use. So if you can provide finger food, things, allow them to use their hands to eat. If you're worried about not having enough consumption, then you need to simplify it so that it's something that they can eat more easily. Also, vision issues can come into play with eating. If you're serving someone, so we just had Thanksgiving and, I looked at the plate and there was turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy, all almost white, and something else on the plate on a fairly blank colored plate. So someone with dim vision, that all blends together and they can't see where the food is. They can't make the distinction. So if you offer them those light colored foods on a red plate, red is a color that people can still easily see and it creates dramatic contrast. So if you put white mashed potatoes and gravy and turkey onto a red plate, they're easily going to see that and be able to consume it. And also putting their liquid in a red cup. Imagine having a white tablecloth and milk or even water in a glass sitting on that. It could blend right into the white tablecloth. So if you put it in a red cup, that they can see and they can easily drink. But it can also work as a trigger. You see that red cup. I see a cup, I take a drink. So that's something that, keeping their liquids in a red cup may trigger them to drink more often. Always give plenty of time for meals. Sometimes people have a hard time with chewing and swallowing. Make sure that they are alternating food with the liquid as they're going along. But give them lots of time. A lot of times, if we're still stopping in to visit our loved one and preparing meals, we're in a time crunch and we got to go. They can feel that agitation that you might be having, and that makes them less likely to go along smoothly with what you're trying to do in a condensed amount of time. But again, eating with them, socializing with them, sitting across from them so that you can make eye contact while you're eating, that creates social connection. Social connection is extremely important when people are dealing with dementia. In fact, it's one of the things that is the most beneficial for people who don't want to develop dementia, who don't want their dementia to progress. Being socially active. Right away we think, oh no, I'm having issues. I don't want to be around people. I don't want them to know that I've lost words. I don't want them to know that there's anything wrong. And so we almost kind of self-isolate, but that's not good. Actually, being more social keeps people cognitively active much longer. So if we can incorporate that into our meal times with people, all the better. If compulsive eating and weight gain is a problem, then you need to be careful about what's in the house. One family told about their mother would eat just anything, and they tried to get out all of the, easily eaten things, and they found that she was eating dry pasta. So it was just a compulsion for her. So either, in their case, they got rid of everything that seemed edible. She was finding something that was. So in that case, if someone is compulsively eating, you want to keep really good, healthy stuff in the house, whether it's raw cut up vegetables, nuts and things that are healthy and beneficial, that are easy for them to access, so they're not getting into sweets and cookies and donuts and all of that kind of stuff. But fruits and vegetables and nuts are really good things to have around for people to snack on all the time. Okay, so this brings us to the end of part one of dementia, understanding dementia behaviors. There will be another session that will talk about some other things, and you know, I'm always available at hopedementiaministry.com. You can contact me through the website. You can call if you have other questions. If you have, if this didn't answer completely for you, but you want to have some further dialogue about that, I'm available and open to that. So thank you so much for joining, and take care.